Hey world! Today I'm going to be making a room inspired by things that make me happy, and if I had a perfect coping space, what that would look like for me. And while I'm making this, we're going to have a little conversation about expectations and managing them. You know, when you're a child, you kind of get told that you can be anything you want to be and you can do whatever you want to do. And I still think that that's a very good ethos to inspire in children, because you never want children to think that they're not going to be good enough to do something if they're really passionate about it. They can set their mind to certain things and they can work towards something like that. One of the things that I've noticed, though, is that now that I've reached adulthood, there's certain things like my mental health that actually are a factor that I should have taken into consideration before I decided on what sort of career path and lifestyle that I wanted to have for myself. To take it back a little bit, I decided that I was really into helping people. I wanted to make people happy. I wanted to make people feel better about what was going on in their world. So I decided that I was going to pursue social work and pursue sort of like youth work, helping work. I wanted to help people. Some people might be thinking, okay, weird flex. There are different types of helping professions out there, but this is what I decided to choose for myself at the time. So I went through university and was learning about all this stuff, and I found that I could have these theoretical conversations about the world and society and different ways that we could help people, and it was really great. But then when I got into the working world, I sort of realized, oh shit, I might not actually be cut out for this. And the reason I say this is because as I grew up, I realized that I am an empath. So the vibe in a room, I sort of absorb. So if it's a really negative atmosphere, I very much internalize that. If it's a very positive atmosphere, I feed off of that, and it really keeps me going, which is great in a lot of ways. But then when you are dealing with people who have dealt with horrific traumas and are going through a lot of different things themselves, for me to absorb that energy and then not have a way to release that, or haven't quite discovered how I let that go, it can become very toxic and very draining for my own mental health. So once I realized that, I was like, oh, how am I gonna help people? How am I going to be there for people when their emotions literally suck the emotional and mental energy out of me? Then I had to take a step back and see, okay, what's manageable for me? I'm still sort of figuring that out. Part of me does wonder if this is something that I might be able to learn to control over time, because I can count on one hand how long I've been working in a professional capacity. This very much could be some sort of skill that I develop and can hone into over time. But then part of me does think, because of the mental illness that I have and because I am an empath, whether or not that is actually possible, or if this is something that is going to be an issue 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line in a working world. But obviously I don't know, because I haven't been doing this for very long. The other aspect of it too is when you have mental illness or mental health struggles, when you're a child, or even as you're going through the education system, despite having deadlines and expectations on you, you can afford to take mental health days, slow down a little bit. You have very few responsibilities. Then when you get into the working world, all of a sudden people are relying on you. You have these deadlines. You have to make sure that you're seeing people at certain times, and you have to contribute in a way that mutually benefits yourself because you're doing a good job, and then the company that you work for. We live in a society where our ability to contribute to the economy and be able to feed in to a capitalist society is sort of what our worth is equated to. For struggling with a mental illness and waking up on certain days, you just can't be fussed and you just want to curl up into a hole and just take a day off and just recuperate. Society's not really constructed to allow that. You do have sick days and you have leeway when it comes to booking appointments and stuff like that. But ultimately, if you utilize your work time too much, that can then have a negative impact on your employment, because it's seen as not being able to uphold your responsibilities. Side note, I'm aware that this is a perspective gained from living in 2 different countries. I'm not currently aware of the sort of expectations for other countries when it comes to individuals living with mental illnesses and working, but I would be interested to learn more about that in the future. Okay, side note over. Having that realization as an adult in the working world that there are days when I mentally feel like shit, but I still have to go into work. And then compound that to the fact that my dumbass decided that I wanted to join a person-centered profession. And when I am visibly uncomfortable, whether it's physically, emotionally, mentally, you can see it on my face. My whole demeanor changes. And so that makes working with people very difficult. There was an instance where I had a panic attack, and then I had individuals that I had to go and see afterwards. And I work with younger people as well. And the kids are very perceptive, and they can tell when something is wrong. And I didn't feel comfortable after literally like having a breakdown being like, yep, okay, I can go now and chat with this young person and help them out, because I hadn't sorted myself out in that moment. And also, I don't know if anyone else has had a panic attack or had any sort of like breakdown, but you are exhausted afterwards. You are mentally drained, you are physically drained, you are emotionally drained. And so having to have that happen, but then still feel like I needed to carry on working, is a very difficult position to be in. It also then makes it difficult to create that balance where you are working and then setting up the appointments and doing that mental health management that you need, because there's not always enough time in the week to actualize those things. In the position that I'm in currently, I start and end work at a different time every day of the week. Some people, when they have that consistent schedule, they could factor in, okay, I'm always going to be home around this time, so I can book any appointments, I can book visits, I can do things within this time space. There's no guarantees with that for me. So then I end up having to make these appointments on the weekend, which is great because that's sometimes what people have to do. But then you obviously neglect that other side of yourself, the side that goes out, enjoys life, goes to movies, sees friends, that sort of thing, because you have to squeeze in all your mental health management during any of the free time that you have over the weekend, because during the week it's just not feasible. Another thing that is really difficult that I'm still negotiating is that because of the work that I'm in and the schedule, it can then feel like I'm not doing enough at home and in my relationship. Now, I don't mean this in the context of female unpaid labor, patriarchal bullshit, gender stereotypes. I mean it in the context of equal partnership and making sure that all responsibilities that are shared equally amongst our relationship and in a household are getting taken care of, and that you're contributing in a meaningful and equal way within a relationship. When you finish the workday and it's this inconsistent time, you find that laundry's not getting done, dishes are not clean, house is sort of in shambles, or you're not providing that sort of emotional stability for your partner, or you're not doing as much together because you literally get up, go to work, try to eat 3 meals a day, come home, and try to get some stuff together before you do it all over again. And I was getting really upset with myself, especially too because you see people are going out and doing things and they're getting healthy and they're providing for their family and they're working and doing all of this stuff, and you're kind of like, shit, I get home and I'm exhausted and I don't know what else to do with myself, and I want to sort of be all of these things and do all of these things, but it's not always manageable, and I just have to worry about myself right now. It's not like I have a family or kids at this point yet, and I end up stressing myself out, and then it obviously has a knock-on effect with my mental health, and then nobody wins at that point. Let's interrupt my reflective ranting to go over the various elements that I've decided to put in my coping room. My tea corner, music station, crafting corner, yoga, crystals and witchcraft, library with accompanying fuzzy blanket for snuggles, and in a minute you will see me move on to the landscaping portion of this room, because another important aspect of coping for myself is having access to some green space, some nature. So we're gonna have some rocks, trees, and water, the Canadian trifecta. And now back to the babbling. I had this really great conversation with my parents, and they basically told me, you can't expect to get everything done during the week, especially because my schedule at work is so inconsistent, and the type of work that I do can sometimes be all over the place, which then can leave me feeling mentally, physically, emotionally drained, to then come home and then think that I'm gonna put a load of laundry on, I'm gonna get all the dishes done, I'm gonna do the X, Y, and Z. It's just not feasible. So I've had to take a step back and let go and think about, okay, what can I get done within this time period that leaves me with enough energy to then carry over into the next day and, for all intents and purposes, live my best life. And that balance is a little bit difficult. In my perfect world, I would love to just have an extra day in the week to have all my appointments scheduled and almost just have like a self-care day, if you will, where you can schedule all my appointments. I can pick up my prescriptions. I can get things in order, but that's just not my reality at this point. Hopefully one day this will be a reality for me, but I'm sure that with any sort of decision that involves mental health, career, lifestyle, there's many different factors that need to be taken into consideration. And I'm sure there are lots of people in positions where these factors make that decision much more difficult. Things like financial situation. If you are the sole income earner or you are really dependent on that income that you make, making the decision to cut your hours even by one day might be really difficult. Additionally, it could be familial obligations. Even if you were to cut your working hours, maybe you have children or parents or other people in your life that you need to take care of. And so that still is another complicating factor in when you're making those decisions to support your mental health. For me currently, I am in the process of applying for a new visa. My current visa expires this July. There are requirements that need to be met in order to improve your success and eligibility for a visa. So that is something that I need to navigate and see if my mental health goals, career goals, life goals are within the same eligibility criteria as a visa. And that's something I'll probably go into more detail in another video because it's not that black and white. And to be fair, I probably need to do a bit more research into it myself. So once again, you guys keep me accountable. Thanks for listening to my babble about expectation management. Hopefully you guys got some insight into my brain. Maybe I've brought up questions for you that you've never thought about before, but I would like also to hear your thoughts on managing expectations as well. How do you consider your schedule and your mental health management and being able to balance life and all the curveballs that it throws at you? Additionally, if you had a coping room in your life, what sort of things would you have in it? Would you take out some of the things that I've put in? Do we have similar coping skills that we have when things are really shit for us? Maybe you guys have some really cool things that you do for mental health and coping that I might like to learn about and try. So if you could leave those ideas, thoughts in the comment section down below, that would be really cool. Additionally, if you have any ideas about topics that I could babble on about while I'm playing The Sims, that would also be greatly appreciated. I have a few ideas lined up, but I'm always open to new ideas as well. In addition to this building series, I'm also planning to do a Create a Sim series where I will take this time to talk about coping strategies that I've tried, coping strategies that I enjoy, coping strategies that I think are bullshit for me, but might be really great for somebody else. And I assume at some point I should also play The Sims via challenges or just general gameplay, but I'm not entirely sure at this point how I want to fit that into my overall vision for what simming and self-care is meant to represent. So that's another thing that if you guys have any options or suggestions, leave that in the comments below as well. Also, shout out to the ambulance that always runs up and down the high street while I'm recording. You, the real MVP. Cool. Thanks. Bye.